Okay, this video is called How is Prometheus Related to Veganism? And just a couple thoughts here. So, Prometheus was one of the heroes of the ancient Greeks, and Zeus was the big god above all the other gods of the ancient Greeks. Okay, and in our metaphor here, Zeus can be thought to represent big pharma and big food. So, Zeus sits on his throne, head of all the gods of Olympus. He's also symbolized by his lightning bolt right here and by his eagle. And in the context of, conventional healthcare, if you think about it, let's say a person has coronary artery disease. Dr. McDougall had a great quote. He said the treadmill stress test is a conveyor belt to the operating room, basically to the cardiac cath lab table and then to the operating room. To put in a coronary artery stent, the billing for that's about $30,000. Okay, to do an open heart surgery, coronary artery bypass graft, CABG, CABG it's typically called, that bills for about $120,000. So you can imagine teaching somebody about the vegan diet. I do this YouTube channel for free, okay? People that coach patients in a more medical, supervised context, they might make a little bit of money. I don't even know how much they make. I'll guess $1,000, $2,000 at the most. There's not much money in it. So as you can imagine, a big hospital, private practice, it's not going to want doctors teaching patients about the vegan diet, low-fat vegan diet, low-fat, low-sodium vegan diet, okay? I joke in some of my books, I have a character who I call Plant Man Prometheus. I like to have the characters speak in dialogues like Plato's Republic because it's a way to get points across by having conversation between several persons. Okay, so anyways, in the story of the ancient Greeks, Prometheus stole fire from the Olympus gods and he gave it to mankind. Prometheus also helped mankind to develop their intellects. That's another story along with his brother Epimetheus. So Prometheus is forethought to think in advance, and Epimetheus is afterthought. Okay, so anyways, here's a nice painting. This is a painting. Zeus was sort of famous for having romantic affairs with women, and he could disguise himself in different shapes. Here he is disguised as a bull, and he seduces this woman named Europa, from which Europe was named. And Zeus is also symbolized here by his eagle. But I simply show it because of, the beauty of the painting by this guy, Jean-Baptiste Pierre, French artist. And Zeus's other name, like his Roman Latin name, is Jupiter. So a lot of beautiful art and literature came out of the ancient Greek mythology. Also comes out of all these fairy tales, from Aesop's fables with the Greeks to the Grimm's Brothers fairy tales and to Hans Christian Andersen and other ones. And I actually think you really should educate kids in all this stuff, because a person who is well educated in all this stuff, as well as history, as well as the Bible, they become very sophisticated at conversational debate. And that empowers them the rest of their lives and their social experiences, also in their work experience. It's harder to mess with them because they're more articulate. So that is in their best interest. A lot of educational training nowadays is vocational training, and people learn some type of technical skill, which is good, but unless they can articulate themselves effectively, they're much more empowered if they can articulate themselves effectively. So anyways, I just thought this was a beautiful painting. Okay, and now here's just a typical example of how this stuff all grows on itself. This right here is the planet Jupiter, named after Zeus, okay? And then the four moons are named after some of Zeus's different lovers: Io, Callisto, Ganymede, and Europa. Okay, and then when NASA made a satellite that they wanted to, study Jupiter or Zeus, they named it Juno, which is another name for Hera. So Hera is the ancient Greek name. Juno is the Roman Latin name for her, and she was the wife of Zeus, and she was always going around looking for him to see if he was running off with one of his concubine lovers. Okay, so it's a little bit funny, and that's sort of a typical example of how metaphors just grow out of this ancient Greek mythology stuff. And I've done a whole series on fairy tales and stuff as well. And I do think this comes up a lot, and it's useful. So here is Prometheus. Zeus sentenced him to be chained to a rock, and each day the eagle, symbolizing Zeus, would come and eat his liver. And as we know, the liver is partially regenerative. The lightning bolt here also symbolizes Prometheus. And this also brings to mind the idea of, suffering for doing good. And in some ways, this is, Christ-like. Christ-like, sacrificed himself to help mankind. And there are other Christ-like figures in history. For example, Socrates is like the Saint Socrates, the man who sacrificed himself for the integrity of philosophy. Okay, King Arthur, in a sense, was a Christ-like figure for England in the medieval age. Okay, so anyways, then what saved Prometheus was Hercules, also can be pronounced Heracles. So that's a long story. We're not going to get into all that, his story with regard to Hera, what she did to him. She didn't like him too much. She was the son of one of Zeus's concubines. Okay, so anyways, Prometheus was finally freed when Hercules, shot the eagle with an arrow. Also, Chiron the centaur helped out too. We're not going to get into all the details of that. But what I'm getting at, and with regard to veganism, is that when a doctor tells you all this stuff, they're in a sense taking a risk, okay? And you saw it with McDougal. They wouldn't send him a single patient at the old hospital where he used to work at. They wouldn't let, Caldwell Esselstyn speak to patients on the Cleveland Clinic campus until he had to take extraordinary measures to get that enabled, even though he was married to the daughter of the previous owner of the hospital. T. Colin Campbell, they tried to fire him. Luckily, because he was tenured, he was protected from that. But I have seen a lot of... The more a doctor tells you the truth, the harder it is for them. The more pressure they get from big pharma, big food, and related entities. So one of the reasons you see anybody who's an unfair ruler, they don't want the people to have freedom of speech. Because freedom of speech, as embodied in the First Amendment, that is the power of the people. So a tyrant ruler wants all the people divided, like the Roman principle in ancient Rome when they conquered the entire Mediterranean and more of what is now Europe. They had a policy of divide and conquer, get all the people and cities all separated from each other, and then it was very easy to conquer them. So the same thing is relevant also for the population. The more people are all divided and broken apart, get rid of the family, make divorce laws so that, the women all want to get divorced, okay? Create feminism so men and women don't speak to each other anymore. And also do everything you can. Promote abortion, promote birth control, anything possible. In the public schools, they now sterilize the kids. Do anything possible to prevent marriages, prevent big families, prevent, break up all these church dioceses with whatever means necessary. All of this splintering of the individuals of society and now censoring their free speech, it diminishes the power of the people. So, luckily we've got some ability on the internet to educate each other about a healthy diet and related topics. So support free speech when you can. Communicate with your friends and family so that they become more educated about a healthy lifestyle and about, whatever else, current events. So anyways, I like this idea of Prometheus that, there's a price to be paid for doing the right thing. And especially what I've seen too is the bigger the audience of the person teaching you the truth, the more likely they're going to get hassled. Okay, my audience is, in comparison with these other ones, really small, so no one really cares about me. But I'm just sharing with you this pattern because it's something to keep in mind, this idea of the truth teller is the one who gets punished. You see that in a bigger context. More famous truth tellers, you've seen how a lot of them get subjected to hassle when they tell you the truth. But it's important society has the ability to have the truth and have free speech. So anyways, this Prometheus seemed to fit with it pretty well.